What's up, everybody? Listen, welcome to the second season of the Shaping Your New Start Education podcast. We are just so excited to be with you. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Phil, too, and I've got amazing guests. I got an amazing guest coming up in just a minute. But listen, this is what I need you to do. If you're listening, I need you to share this podcast with somebody. If you are watching, I need you to like, subscribe, and share this video because we're going to talk about history. We're going to go deep into history, and we have a wonderful guest that is a professor in history, everybody. So listen, this is what you don't want to miss. Now, before I go any further, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor. We Need More Clouds. We Need More Clouds, a book about blended families. And this is written by Lynette S. Wesley. Okay. This book, let me tell you something, educators, this book you need to have in your library. Everybody needs to have this book in their library. We Need More Clouds. You can go to weneedmoreclouds.com and you can get that book. It's also an Amazon bestseller, so you can check it out there. Another thing you need to have in your library, but this is your digital library, 6 Ways to Shape Your New Start by yours truly, Dr. Phil 2. All right, this is a guide for educators and students and parents. This is just talking about 6 ways that you can shape your new start. It is a wonderful opportunity. So listen, as we go into the next part of this, we just want you to be excited about what's about to happen, what's about to go down. This is the Shaping Your New Start Education Podcast. All right, everybody, we're back. And listen, once again, we love for you to share this video. I'm going to bring my guest on right now. And this is, everybody, Dr. Stephen Bond. Stephen Bond, what's going on, man?
Doing good, Doc. Good seeing you again. I'm just excited to be on your show again. So good seeing you, and thank everyone who'll be watching.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, you know, we are just beginning. We're going into our new season, our new season. We know school has already begun, but we are now in our new season of this podcast, and I'm very excited to get it going. And of course, we've been in contact through the summer and through time. And listen, you know, so much has gone on with you. So much has gone on. You've been, you know, you've changed jobs, you've gotten new opportunities, and guess what, everybody? He's written a new book, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. He's written a new book. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But listen, tell us about your journey. What's going on new with Dr. Bond?
Well, a lot of good things been going on new, and it's been a blessing. actually in March, I won an election and I'm on the North Carolina Council for the Social Studies. And what it is, it's a part where you are on the state board and they make decisions when it comes to curriculum and how social studies should be taught, not be taught. And I was one of the people that won, and so I'm a board director member. And that's the thing I've really been excited about because for the election I won, and so I get a 3-year term, so I'm on the board, and there's even room for more. But so at this point, I'm on the board of directors, and we have a lot of say what's going on with the curriculum, what's taught. And you know how I am, where I've always felt history needs to be taught the right way. One of my themes I always say is that, history cannot be sugarcoated or swept under the rug. So this is
Yeah.
another way where I have an opportunity where I can show and convey more to others about the need for history to still be taught because there are some people who don't want history taught and it needs to be because there's so many stories that are unknown and untold that most people know about. And, even with my grandfather that, you know, these things have not been taught. And so you miss out a big chunk of history when that's not included. So that position has really been a blessing. And I'm glad where I'm at. I'm teaching Johnson County and it's been awesome. And, they embraced me and, we've done, I still teach the same way, doing the videos, explaining things, could be branch of the government, different things. And so, I'm still teaching the same way, still having fun teaching. And, I remember the last podcast I mentioned how history needs to be taught with relevance, accuracy and with passion. And, as some I will continue to do and Lord be my help, I'll continue to. So it's just been an amazing journey and I'm just excited about the new things and it just be good to be on your show again. And so um, it's been going great. Usually we have meetings in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we meet usually every other month. And I'm on different boards and task force where we have meetings about the things in social studies and what's being taught. And one of the things they're incorporating in North Carolina as well, and I definitely want to do that eventually. They now made an AP African American history course, and that's
Mm.
exciting because in the past I've taught AP American history and AP American government and politics. But the biggest issue I would say with AP American history, they don't talk much about the Black history. They'll
Wow.
mention a little bit about Reconstruction, they'll mention about Civil Rights Movement briefly, but for
Yeah.
the most part, it's not covered. So in this new course that they have with AP African American history, they're going to talk about Africans and Americans in the United States, the impact, not just slavery, but about the accomplishments, the
Mhm.
movements, the impact that we've had on society and in our country. And for the most part, most educators, I would say, miss the mark and don't incorporate it in the lesson. So this is a great way and now to put in an AP course
Yeah.
where students will also have access to the AP board and college credit. That's just an awesome thing. And I'm just excited about that as well. That is coming to different states and just being on the board of directors for the Council of Social Studies. I'm truly blessed to have.
Wow. And how many months? Because I know it's been a little bit since you have been elected to the board. How long has this been now?
It's been since March, and we've had 3 in-person meetings, and then we sometimes have different Zoom meetings to discuss things, and it's just wonderful because the people that are there, they're visionaries like myself, and they want history to be taught the right way. And the great thing I like is not about race because there are people on the board of different races, and the same goal and vision is there that they just want history to be taught the right way and not leave any stone unturned. And
Yeah.
that's really what you want because and we talk about this a lot, Doc, for so long in history, so many facts, so many stories have been ignored, forgotten about, and some people didn't care about, and they knew that because they felt like if you open up certain avenues of history,
Yeah.
that people may be offended. But you can't go forward unless you know what happened. And sometimes it's
Right.
not always a pretty thing to teach. It's not always a cool way to teach it, but you still can't ignore it. And so I'm glad that the board of directors were on one accord with that about making history as relevant as possible.
That's powerful. And what difference have you seen since you've been on board?
What I've seen on board is, a lot of teachers like myself on the board, because most of them are, middle school and high school teachers. They are trying to get more elementary teachers on board. But the teachers that are on board, most of them middle high school teachers, and they have the same idea where they want, women's history, including curriculum more, that they want the history of blacks. Also the Native Americans, because that's another chapter, especially in state of North Carolina, that has been forgotten about. And a cousin of mine, Dr. Arvin Smallwood, who he just got promoted to vice president of NCNT, he did great research on the Tuscarora Indians of North Carolina. And so that's a whole nother chapter of history that got ignored, because we know that the Native Americans had their land taken away from them.
Yep.
They owned the land, but it was taken away. But we know about some of the massacres, a Little Bighorn and some of the other tragedies that happened. And once again, for the most part, that's another chapter of history that's ignored or forgotten, or nobody wants to talk about. So it's not just about Black Americans, but also about Native Americans, also about women in politics, women impact, because there was a lot of women unsung in the movement that made North Carolina a better state, but they just not getting credit for it. And so now we have people on the board that want this to be taught and encouraging it to be
Come
taught.
on.
That just makes a huge difference.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So tell me, you have a book out, and let's promote this book a little bit more. Dr. Stephen L. Bond, unsung but forever remembered, the man who invented the automobile turn signal, David G. Bond. We've got to talk about that because
Definitely.
when I did the research, I don't see it showing up in a lot of history. Any websites is giving credit to another name. And
Hmm.
so, what do we say to the people that say, "Well, I did the research and it's not there"? What is that all about? Tell me about this book, because now you are revealing something you just can't research online, but now you have it in a book. Talk about it.
Right. Now, here's where this journey first started. First of all, growing up in Queens, New York, I heard from my dad that my grandfather bet the seemed like for cars. And I told a teacher that. And the teacher said, "No, Steve, you're lying. You're making it up. You're making it up." And I kind of yelled at the teacher. And my dad, being a strict man of God, he was like, "Stephen, you can't do that." But what
Right.
my dad did do, he actually did call the teacher and say, "My son was telling the truth. His grandfather did invent it." And so for years, it became an oral history in North Carolina, all the way to New York, Queens, and Long Island, New York. But nothing much was done or said about it. And I found later why, because sometimes when we lived in Queens and Freeport, Long Island, and you're from Long Island as
Sure.
well, we would take that drive. And my dad would sometimes we'd see the cotton fields and tobacco fields. He would say, "Boy, we should have owned all this land, all the work we did, what my dad did." And he never usually talked about it in detail.
Yeah.
And so come to find out, because I was seeing him pretty much every year, and he passed in 1999.
Mm.
So long story short, at the age of 16, he started a patent for a signal light. And at this point, no car had a signal light. Buick was the first one to have one in the late 1920s. So there
Wow.
have been one or two patents, kind of, start, but not much. And his was detailed. His said, like it'll be a light that'll go up the signal left and right, and also a brake light. So when you're slowing down, a light will come on. And at the age of 16, he started this. And
Wow.
so 4 years later, he was able to get a US patent confirming that his invention was his. He went through the proper paperwork because he knew how Jim Crow, North Carolina was. He
Sure.
signed off on it. He had his lawyer sign off on it, and it was a go. But years later, he had problems promoting it and selling it because of, one, the racial climate, Bertie, North Carolina, what it was like back then. And so he said there were times when people threatened his children's life. So years later, the patent started to expire, because back then, if a patent expired, someone legally could buy it. And so he was trying to find some money, went to a few banks. They denied him a loan. And
Mm.
my aunt told me the main reason why was because he was an African American male with a multi-million dollar invention. So he even went up to people and said, "Listen, I'll go half with you, you know, if you give me the money for it." There was no Shark Tank back then, like we have now on TV, where he could have went to a show like Shark Tank, and he could have funded it for him. So the patent expired, and his dream was pretty much faded. But now here's the good news. One day, and it's amazing, I was on Twitter, and one of my old students from about 2006, there was like a little chat about unsung adventures and unknown inventions. And he followed me and he said, I want Dr. Stephen Bond, my teacher from years ago, to talk about how his grandfather invented the signal light. And I was like, you remember me telling that story? And it just struck something in me. I said, listen, the time is now. Something need to be written about this and documented about it because so many of my family members have died. My grandfather had 10 children and adopted one. And my dad passed 2 years ago, so only two are still alive. And so
Yeah.
I did an intense Google search. I went on Google Patent, and I'm gonna show you how I do it. You look up Google Patent, and you have the patent number, and you look up David G. Bond. It will show you not only the patent, and he wrote 2.5 pages full of how it worked intricately. And let me tell you something. I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I can't understand what he wrote. That's how articulate he was. He was
Wow.
raised in a sharecropping farm, has 6 years of formal education, and I could barely understand what he wrote.
Whoa.
That's how articulate he was. So I found it, and he also had three diagram drawings, which meticulously talks about how each part of the signal light would work. And then there's a page which shows his signature and the lawyer's signature, and it was approved by the U.S. government with the patent number March 1st, 1927. And so when I
Wow.
found it, I said, you know what, I gotta put this in the book. So it's a short story. It's only about 8 pages. I wrote about his background where he was raised on a rural farm. His sisters found a school in Bertie County because the county outside Bertie County, because the county he was in did not have a real legitimate school. And
Yeah.
this was during Jim Crow. Separate but equal, Plessy versus Ferguson was in place, and I mentioned in the book. So he couldn't just go to just any school. So he found a vocational school in the little city called Parmalee in Martin County. Went there, and that's when he had a vision for this signal light. And he had a professor gave him like the electrical equipment to help him invent it. And so there it came forth. And so he had the patent for it. But years later, when the patent expired, there wasn't much he could do legally, and they gave someone else the credit. But the blessing is I was able to find the patent, his drawings with the signature. And whenever you get a patent from the U.S. government, that patent number stays. Like you look at the price and say like 2,964,211. That stays. And so I have it there. And so basically, I just want the word spread that my grandfather, David George Bond, had a patent for a signal light. He never got the credit, recognition, money, compensation, nothing because of the era that he lived in. And he still lived a full life, raised 11 children, was a devoted
Wow.
father, husband. And so, but you have to wonder if he would have got credit for that invention. He probably made more because in his house, and his house is still owned by our family, my aunt legally owns it. He would have gadgets and things he'd have in his house, but never got a patent for it because sometimes people would say, well, David, why would you want to get another patent? Look what happened the last time. So he was frustrated. So he would build these things and just use in the house. He had his house where he had motion sense lights in his house all over. And my dad did the same
Wow.
thing. He was an engineer at Con Edison. And so at 8 o'clock at night, the lights went out in our house, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. And well, it was a patent for it or not, we don't know. But what if he would have got the credit that was due to him? What more could he have invented?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about every vehicle. I should drive a forklift. Forklifts have signal lights. Every moving vehicle
Right.
has a signal light.
That's
So
right. That's right.
this book is more just to honor his legacy because I want his name known. So when I see a history book, I want some history books to say David George Bond invented the
Yeah.
signal light, just like Garrett Morgan got credit for the traffic light. And that's my goal for this book.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a powerful story. And, a story about a patent expiring. Now, do you have any like history research about the person who bought the patent after it was expired?
Now, I've not. I've been looking intensely for, and I haven't. Now, I did look and see some people who did have patent for signal light, but it doesn't say like who brought it. Now, I don't know. I can go about that because it's probably not a state thing in North Carolina, but it's probably being that it's given by the U.S. government. Now,
Yeah,
they might have that information, but I've been looking for it. But my thing is, I'm sure somebody knows,
yeah,
and I'm still in the process of researching because when I started this project and it came out, a couple people who I know have experience in patent laws have told me, they were like, Doc, we want to research this and help you out. So if there's any way we can help, we can. And
yeah,
so I have some
yeah,
people right now in the midst of trying to figure out who did buy it, and 'cause we know when it was relinquished legally from him, but who got credit for it and the monetary compensation. But
absolutely.
now as we speak, that's still in process. But one thing, I just want his name in the history book because on this earth, and he lived a humble, fulfilled life, but it should have been more. And
Yeah.
that's my goal and mission with this project here.
Yeah, and it tells us a lot about copyrights, about patents, about creators and creations, and how to really seal the deal on your creation. And listen, today it's no different. We've seen artists that have written music where
Right.
music has been stolen and put on a major
Hmm.
platform, and till today they're still not getting paid for their music. So it's
That's right.
important, students and creators out there to go through the process legally about getting your patents. Yes, it is better today than it was before, but people like David George, um, Bond, right, have paved the way. They have done a lot to create awareness in our systems and the things that we do. And imagine back in those days where we didn't have much, and
Right.
they're thinking of how can we have more? How can we build on more? So, this is important to get out there. So let's talk about the book one more time. It is called Unsung but Forever Remembered. All right. The man who invented the automobile turn signal, David Bond, he invented it. He invented the patent for it, did not get the credit. But you can get this book and find Dr. Bond's research in this book on Amazon. You can get it right now. It is available right now. And want to thank you so much for coming on this show and talking about it, because we want people to know. We want the world to know about people who have created, who have given to society. And this is part of history. And you are a professor of history. All right, you are a professor of history. So tell us, where are you working right now? Where are you teaching? And how do you continue to take what you've learned about your grandfather and inspire more students?
Well, I work at News Charter School, which is in Johnson County, and I've been well received at the school. It's been going great. The students, have a love for history. I also teach ELA as well, and so I incorporate both subjects. So it's been going really well. The staff is great, the administrators is great, and matter of fact, many of them have already bought the book. And just yesterday, the superintendent who bought the charter school came in my room and was like, Dr. Bond, and I said, yes, what you need? She's like, I want you to sign the book because your book came over the weekend. I read it, and she was like, wow. And so that support, that really makes me feel good as well. And so things are going great there. Like I said, the book is selling really well. One of the things I did do, I made the price for $13.99. I didn't want it to be too much, and it's also available on ebook for $3.99. And so I wanted it to be where people could read it as a short story. 'Cause I wanted to think, because just like you mentioned, even with music, my question was, how many David George Bonds are there who had $1 million idea, but nothing for the most part came out of it? 'Cause I know my grandfather's not the only one, because if it happened to him, it probably happened to others. And he was a tough man, but he also was cautious. So when he was getting threats from by his family, I know that was one reason why he backed off and was discreet about it. And that's the part I want to get out. The thing about something, he first had to go to a segregated school.
Wow.
Secondly, he had threats. Thirdly, he could not get a bank loan. Now, I'm pretty sure if I have a pretty known million or billion-dollar idea, some
Yeah,
bank is going to take a risk. I don't care what your credit score. They say, wait, that's your invention. They'll say, listen,
absolutely.
I'll give you the money for it, but when you get the money, don't forget me now. Hook a brother
That's
up.
right.
So,
Hey, listen.
so
Absolutely.
that's what my feeling is.
Well,
So
listen.
my
Yeah.
my like I said, my goal is just
Go
let.
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no, no,
Oh,
no.
I was just
You
saying
you
my goal
paused
is
for a
just that
minute, so I
I
was
want
trying
people
to
to know.
interject.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So I'm just excited about the book. I've had family members read it too. I had cousins, nephews, and my auntie read it. And my aunt lives not too far. She lives still in Bertie County. She's about 85 years old. And she saw the book and she gripped it for about a half hour and crying. She was like, nephew, you wrote a book about my daddy? And I said, yes, ma'am, that's my grandfather. And she kept looking through. And we also put in the book, I listed all his children. My dad was turned to Charles Bond, who died 2 years ago. And I put the daughter he did adopt. So I put all 11 of the children he did raise. And also I put a picture of his house that he built in 1956 with his hands, built it from the ground
Wow.
up. And built in 1956. That was remodeled, refurbished a couple of times. And recently was refurbished in 2018, and the house is still in Bertie County. So it's still a place, that is still relevant and still here. And so I put that in the book too. And my aunt was like, that's the house she was raised, and she was just so excited about it. So even despite what he had to go through, what he lost, he started a pretty good life. He built his own home. He sold fertilizers and soil and did farming. But at the same time, we have to think here he was a farmer and sold fertilizer. This man of mind he could be like Albert Einstein because he started building this at the age of 16
Wow.
with the education of just 6 years formally. The rest of the time he would tell us they went to school for a couple months and then they had to harvest the tobacco, the cotton, and peanuts. So he didn't really have much of a formal education, but he had a sharp brain.
That's right. That's all you need. Listen.
Mhm.
Uh we want to inspire other creators. As I'm wearing a shirt that says created, it really says created on purpose. And I believe we're created on purpose for a purpose. I believe that we were created to create, right? And
Mhm.
so what we want to tell you scholars is never stop creating, but when you do create, learn how to get the credit. Whether you write music, whether you do art, whether you have a patent, because there are thousands of patents out there right now that have not made it out, that have not, met its full potential. And you can look around the house right now and realize, hey, I need to create a patent for this. Have you ever just had that idea? Like you see somebody made something, be like, I should have created that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I should have
definitely.
created that. And so we just want to inspire the rest of the creators out there, create, but also, now today you have more resources to your disposal than before. But people like David George Bond have created that opportunity for us to now. And this story is a great story that will inspire many. All right, we want to continue to talk about Unsung. You can get this on Amazon. You get this on Amazon, Unsung but Forever Remembered. Thank you, Dr. Bond, for spending time with me on the first podcast of this season. And listen, we pray that you have more success. We pray that, God would just continue to bless you with more, especially book sales and getting that story out and more resources to find out who bought the patent after it was expired. I'm glad you found the patent number. That is incredible. That's an incredible accomplishment. And we thank you for sharing your story with us, doing the research and making this happen. All right, listen, everybody. This is the Shaping Your New Start Education podcast, where we talk everything and anything education. And we're just so happy to have our guest, Dr. Stephen Bond, with us. Go check out the book. Also, we want you to follow us right there, right above. You see Dr. Phil 2 underscore on Twitter, Dr. Phil 2 underscore 2 on Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Shaping Your New Start, and continue to follow us. You can follow Dr. Stephen Bond. You can go to Dr. Stephen Bond on Instagram. You can follow him and see what more he's teaching. And listen, thank you so much for being a part of our audience, everybody. Listen, we thank you so much. This is the Shaping Your New Start Education Podcast.
Thank you, Bob.